Welcome. Come on in. Pull up a stool and let me pour you a drink. And let's talk a little noir at the bar.
Thanks for joining us today for another episode of Noir at the Bar, where you get to hear some of your favorite authors reading from their books and short stories. Now, this season, our guest readers are authors that are going to be attending the Left Coast Crime in Seattle, April 11th to 14th. So not only do you get to hear them on the show here, you can go visit them, meet them, and maybe get a book signed. We've got the guy here for us. He's a Seamus Award finalist and winner of 2 Claymore Awards. And his book he's going to be reading from is called Big Fat...
Oh, my.
Jimmy Cooper Mystery Number 1. It's released in May of 2021. So tell us, Lawrence Allan, what's this going on with you down here?
Well, I'm also enjoying the beer nuts, which coincidentally are made in my hometown of Bloomington Normal, Illinois. So I'm going to read from the first chapter of the book. So it's about Jimmy Cooper. He is a former child star and recovering addict who gets a second shot at fame as a famous private detective in L.A., and this chapter is what happens, is the event that brings him back into the public eye.
Fantastic. Well, I'm looking forward to it, so go for it.
It was a weekend afternoon in L.A., so traffic wasn't terrible, just bad. A case of mine had taken an unexpected turn, and I nervously gripped the wheel of my beloved blue Toyota as I chased a black Ford sedan west on Venice Boulevard. 3 LAPD cruisers were behind us with their sirens screaming, and I was making a phone call. Over in West Hollywood, Mo picked up on the third ring. He's my neighbor, someone I can rely on, which is great because at that moment, I needed his help. Jimmy, what's going on? He was bright and cheerful, probably lounging on his couch, an ice hibiscus tea in hand, fending off the summer heat. You have to turn on Channel 5. There's a chase on. It's amazing. I glanced into the sky. There was a police chopper, and behind that, Channel 5's eye in the sky. I turned my attention back to the Ford in front of me and tightened my grip on the wheel. Yeah, it's me. I'm in the chase. And it all felt somehow familiar. Mo's voice tightened. Why is he chasing you? What did you do? I'm chasing him. Why in the hell are you doing that? That was a legit question on Mo's part. I do have a history of making bad decisions. Before I could justify this as work-related, the Ford made a sharp left. I did the same, barely making it through the intersection as a couple of cars slammed on their brakes. The cops did the responsible thing and slowed down, taking their time. Show-offs. I need you to do me a solid. I need you to call my mom. Mo was silent. Are you high right now? On pills? That's when the neurons locked into place, and I remembered why this felt familiar. More than a few years ago, after I had cratered my acting career, I had led the police on a slow-speed chase through the Hollywood Hills while on a combination of booze and painkillers. I really wanted some tacos, and I knew I shouldn't have been behind the wheel, so I decided the responsible thing to do was to drive really slowly. However, when you ignore every stop sign and stop light, you're still a traffic hazard. The whole thing ended with my crashing, if you could use that word, into a grapefruit tree and becoming a viral clip on YouTube for about 3 months. No, I'm not. I licked my lips. I hadn't realized how much I was sweating. High-speed chases are terrifying. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. This is totally work-related. Jimmy, Mo used his dad voice, let the cops handle it. He was probably right. I can't. I had to see this through to the end. This elderly Korean couple, Mr. and Mrs. Lee, had hired me because a pushy guy kept coming around wanting to buy a painting they had. It was sentimental to them. Their only son, who had passed away, had given it to them. But maybe for the right price, they'd be willing to part with it. After all, they had their twilight years to think of. They called me because they were getting nervous. The guy seemed desperate, and they wanted to know if he was legit. Spoilers, he wasn't. When we confronted him, he took off with the painting and drove. That's when I decided to do right by them and set off in pursuit. Like I said, I wasn't always known for making good decisions. Just call my mom, I told Mo. I'm going to need a lawyer. The Ford was heading toward a park. You stop the car, Mo ordered. Let the cops handle it. You call your mom. The Ford stopped at the park with smoking tires, bumping up against the curb. Families started to scatter. The driver jumped out of the car and headed into the park. In his left arm was the painting, still framed.
How dare you!
She told me I couldn't call her anymore if I got into trouble. I slammed my brakes, sliding to a stop next to the Ford. Over the years, I had seriously pushed my luck with her, and now that I was working at her firm, she would prefer that I kept my nose clean. "Don't get out of the car. Don't get out of the car," begged Mo, his voice rising higher. I got out of the car. "Call my mom," I shouted before tossing the cell into the seat and running after the driver. I'm 5'7", a scrappy 150, but I'm not what you call a natural runner. Sure, I can put one foot in front of another, but it's awkward and has resulted in me getting caught while my faster friends got away. The driver had reached the edge of the park, tossed the painting over the fence, and was now struggling to follow it. He looked like a high school football player who had gone soft. He was about 40 years old and wore a decent brown suit, the kind you get at a mall, with a white button-down shirt and cheap shoes. That was my first clue about this guy. Never trust cheap shoes. The guy stopped trying to hop the fence, reached into his coat, and pulled out a gun. Looked like a semi-automatic something. I don't know. Guns aren't my thing. But I knew what they could do, and he was pointing this one at me. I stumbled to a stop and put my hands in the air. "Whoa, whoa, whoa, whoa," I said. The black metal of the gun glinted in the sunlight. I hadn't expected this. This was a guy who couldn't keep a job for more than 6 months. He was the sort to buy the first round, max out his credit cards, and be the last one to leave the party. He was desperate, but nothing in his life said he was hold someone at gunpoint desperate. Guess I overlooked something. He spoke through clenched teeth. "This is how things are going to go." I frowned. Was this guy serious? Did he not see the cops? The chopper? What made him think he was in charge? "Drop the weapon now!" 3 cops, weapons drawn, were approaching from behind, step by step, moving as one, with me stuck in the middle. The perfect place to be killed in a crossfire. I wondered if this was how I was going to go out. Would it look good? Would I look good as my body was riddled with bullets like when Sonny got it in The Godfather? Jesus, what was I thinking? That's a terrible way to go. I turned to the cops, hands still high in the air. My heart pounded in my chest. Or was that the helicopters that hovered over us? I could see the other cops clearing out the park, kids clutching their parents' chests, strollers rolling away, and the yellow tape coming out. "Guys, let's be cool, okay?" I said to the 3 cops with the guns. "No one wants to get shot here." The driver took that moment to look around, and one of the cops decided to take a step forward. The driver gripped his weapon and aimed it at her. All around me, the tension ramped up as the cops stopped moving and squared up, ready to pull their triggers. "Hey, hey, hey, let's not escalate!" I shouted. The cops checked in with each other, wondering if they should listen to this.
Oh my.
I was really hoping they would, because my plan was to not have this case end in a shooting. I was thinking I could talk the guy down. In my previous life as an actor, I had been really charming, and during my downward spiral into drugs, I got away with so much because I could spin around studio execs, my agent, my friends, and even my family with words. The guy with the gun, he was about to get the Jimmy Cooper treatment. I took a deep breath and told him, "Okay, just so you know, they might shoot you. Live. On TV." I pointed up to the Channel 5 chopper. "Is that how you want to go down?" The driver swallowed hard. "Do you have a mom or a dad?" I got both," he replied. "Okay, great. Nuclear family. Some people are lucky that way. Now, just imagine how they would feel watching you get shot." The driver looked at the cops, who were keeping their eyes trained on him. I leaned into his field of vision and gave him my best encouraging smile, hoping to give him that extra nudge toward making the right choice. Finally, the driver dropped his gun and raised his arms in surrender. I started breathing again. 2 cops swarmed him, taking him to the ground with shouting and grunts. I watched the handcuffs come out. That's when I felt the 3rd cop grab my right arm and twist. As pain shot up into my shoulder, I asked to no one in particular, "What the f-?"
How dare you?
I tried to repeat my query, but I was being thrown to the ground. "Dude," I gasped, looking up over my shoulder at the cop, "I'm the good guy!"
Fantastic. That's great. That's great. Now, I have to ask, where did you draw this character from in your life?
That's a great question. I thought of this idea of a child star as a private detective. I was on a plane in my previous life, I was trying to break into television, and I was trying to write a new pilot, and I was trying to think of a good idea. I couldn't come up with a good idea, so I started asking myself, well, what's a bad idea? What would be an idea that would get me thrown out of a meeting? That would get me, that they would, like, talk about in the break rooms, like, "Can you believe this guy pitched this idea to me?" And I thought about, it'd be hilarious to pitch a former child star as a private detective. Because I love, like, detective shows from the 80s. And so I was like, that'd be funny. But then I couldn't stop thinking about the idea, so it just kept coming back to me. So Jimmy himself is just a mishmash of my own anxieties and hang-ups and weird perspective on life and all the child actors that have ever been and who've crashed and burned and survived and stuff like that.
Yeah, we've met a lot of them.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. That's
Thank
great.
you.
And we look forward to seeing you at the Left Coast Crime in Seattle as well this year.
Super excited.
I'm sitting here with my good friend Marco Carocari, sipping Cosmos. And Marco, you are going to read a short story from the Saints and Sinners anthology, from last year's anthology, but you also were just nominated for this year's anthology, which is exciting. I'm excited to hear it. Tell us a little bit about it.
Thank you. Yeah, this year, that's a fun little story that I got to write that's taking place in Palm Springs. I'm very happy that they included it as one of the finalists. Last year's was sort of my first attempt at noir. I've always loved noir movies and books, and did not write noir when I did my debut novel, Blackout. But this story had kind of been bouncing around in my head for years, and so I was happy to finally get it written a few years back, and then for Saints and Sinners to think it was good enough last year to include in the anthology. It's a darker tale, definitely more fitting maybe for Noir at the Bar than Blackout was.
For it.
Whenever I think of the day the police found my friend Grace Peterson, I smell tuna casserole. I was carrying the glass dish out to the Petersons' farm shortly before 5. Its flavorful scent in my nose, the tinfoil's metallic flutter in my ears. It's been 30 years since that October afternoon in '88, my sophomore year of high school, and I hadn't touched one since. Grace had gone missing 2 days earlier, after leaving school around 3 and never returning home. Sheriff Bowman, his 2 deputies, and a group of volunteers had combed our little town in search of her without luck. As I approached the Petersons' humble old farm with its 2 medium-sized barns, the setting sun doused everything in a warm golden hue. My mother made me wear a nice white shirt and beige dress pants, and the muggy air turned my skin damp. Dirt and pebble crunched under my blue sneakers, and gripping the casserole tighter, I averted my eyes as wind like a hot breath of dust ruffled my blonde tousled hair. I'll never understand why people send food during times of crisis. Whoever praised pot roast for saving the day after losing their wife to a long battle with cancer, or mac and cheese after their husband wrapped his car around a tree at 60 miles an hour. I had no spit to wet my lips, and with every step the pressure in my chest increased, tightening my sense of foreboding. "I'm sorry, Kenny, this must be very hard for you. I know you two are close," Sheriff Bowman had said to me in the principal's office the day before, when he questioned several of us at school. Built like a linebacker who overindulged in beer and junk food for years, he'd outgrown his uniform, punishing its fabric something fierce in all the kinds of places. Despite his stature, bald head, mustache, and intimidating gun, the bags under his eyes always reminded me of Droopy from the Tex Avery cartoons. Best friends since kindergarten, right? He tried for a friendly smile, maybe to put me at ease, but his eyes showed pity. "Yes," I said, sitting on a chair, my legs pressing hard against its metal legs. He scribbled on a notepad, "You and Ryan Hollister." I nodded once and pushed my glasses up the bridge of my nose. But Ryan's family didn't move here until 2nd grade. Ryan was a good-looking kid, but, like me, somewhat introverted, and many classmates had treated him like an outsider. Not Grace. On the 2nd day, she dragged me over to the newcomer during recess, and the 3 of us formed a lasting friendship over apples and pears she brought from the farm. "You guys spend a lot of time together?" I picked up my beans. "Yeah, well, used to." "What changed?" My grades," I said, not meeting his eyes. My parents hired a private tutor twice a week to make me get back on track." "Nothing wrong with them wanting you to succeed," he said, nodding, "but I see how that doesn't leave much time for your friends." "Did you see Grace yesterday?" "Between classes, around 2. "Did she seem different to you at all?" I shrugged. "No, well, maybe kind of upset, but she said it was nothing. I didn't tell him I knew she lied, but not why, and that it hurt my feelings. He wanted to know if Grace had trouble with classmates or teachers, but she got along with everyone, and I told him as much." "What about her brother?" he said in a level tone, but the twitch in his left eye didn't escape me. "Bruce Jr., who'd returned that June after 6 years at the juvenile detention center out east. He and Grace were thick as thieves despite their 5-year difference, but he never had any use for Ryan and me." "They got along fine," I said. I was the one scared of him. "Did she tell you about their fight?" I shook my head no, but I'd heard the rumor. There was a time I'd have been the first to know. "Did you see Ryan yesterday?" Yeah, we have class together. and I stopped by his house to borrow his notes for homework, but he wasn't there. You didn't leave together? No, he didn't feel well, and Mrs. Brennan excused him early. Is that why he didn't show up for class today? He said, watching me closely. I shrugged again, wondering about that myself. What time did you go to his home? After class, around 4:30. Any idea where he was? No, I said, but I had my suspicions. Sheriff Bowman sighed. Grace would tell you if she was in trouble, if anyone was bothering her. Yes, I said, still wanting to believe that, even though I knew it was no longer true. And you're sure you don't know what upset her? No. The lie came so calmly, so smoothly, it surprised me. I hadn't known what bothered Grace when I ran into her, but did by the time Bowman asked me. Sorry, Kenny, this must be hard for you. I lowered my head, eyes welling up. I promise we're doing everything to bring Grace home safe. But his words didn't make me feel any better or alleviate my fears, and I couldn't get out of there fast enough. Truth was, Grace, Ryan, and I, we all had secrets that summer. Most we'd shared, but some we'd kept even from each other. And one by one, all began to unravel.
That was great, Marco. Really powerful stuff.
Thank you.
So what drew you to noir? Like, why did you make the shift to writing noir? I know you've continued to as well.
Yeah, I have these two sides to me, I guess, where I see humor in almost everything. It doesn't matter how dark it gets. I can always find like a little bit of a light or a little bit of a humorous situation. And I love to laugh, and I definitely wanted to put some of that into the debut novel, Blackout. So that was more of a mystery thrillers, with light banter, but then also some serious issues. And at the same time, I have these very dark moments when my mind goes to completely different places. And I felt like, that actually needs room too. So the short story Grace is definitely one of those where it just gets a little darker. And I was looking for closure, but not a happy ending. And I just finished a manuscript that's hopefully becoming a series. And that is also kind of dark. It's set here in Palm Springs, and I'm very excited about it. Hopefully it'll go somewhere. Agents will let me know, I'm sure.
Excellent. Yes, it's a great manuscript, so I'm super excited. And
Thank you.
And darkness doesn't seem very Palm Springs, but it is with all that sunshine.
Yeah, Palm Springs isn't. It's not all sunshine, cocktails, and Sinatra parties, although that's what people see. There's a pretty dark underbelly to Palm Springs, which is fun to write about. Yeah, oh yeah.
Well, speaking of dark underbellies, Joe, what's going on?
I'm actually sipping a cocktail with the famous Shelley Adina, and then she's going to read from the Clockwork City, a steampunk adventure mystery. It's book 1. The Lady Georgia Brunel Mysteries, and I believe it's available now. So looking forward to this.
First, I'm going to read a little snippet that kind of sets up the world in one paragraph, and then go straight to the discovery of the body, as one does. 400 years before, the Doge, then in power, had been in such fear for his life from his many enemies that he had commissioned the inventor Leonardo da Vinci to solve the problem. The great mathematician and engineer had installed a massive clockwork beneath Venice, with platforms bearing up the many neighborhoods on their islands. The church bells would ring, the bridges would go up, and the neighborhoods would slowly revolve into new positions, thus confounding anyone seeking to murder the Doge. Wednesday, May 1st, 1895. Georgia rose at 8 the next morning, determined to make her son Teddy proud, and attempt a watercolor painting. Since they had left the ball relatively early, she had slept well and deeply. She must not get into the habit of keeping country hours, however. She set up her little travel easel on the balcony, a cup of something frothy called a cappuccino at her elbow, and realized that the morning light was its own reward. She left the little painted sketch to dry on a table in the sunny sitting room, and took her equipment downstairs. There was an enchanting door on the opposite side of the canal, with hanging baskets of flowers on either side that she must capture from water level. No reflections there, just simple shapes and shadows, and a chance to paint the raucous reds of geraniums and impatiens against the yellow stucco. Last night, when Lorenzo had pulled them in, The water stairs had been nearly engulfed by the tide. This morning, as she went out through the French doors, they were half exposed on the ebb. What on earth? Georgia's mind took a moment to parse what it was seeing. Then she dropped her easel and paint-box on the fundamente, hauled up her skirts, and descended 4 steps, green and glistening with slippery weed. The body of a man floated over the bottommost steps, which were still submerged, yet clear in the undulating light. Close by, where a short stone jetty waited to receive supplies for the household, an abandoned gondola bumped the stone with a forlorn, hollow sound. The man lay face down, his arms floating out to both sides. He wore evening dress, black coat, a glimpse of the back of a collar, black trousers, no shoes, dark hair. Spots floated in front of her eyes, and not from the sparkling sunlight on the water either. She dragged in several deep breaths until her vision cleared. Turn him over to see who he is. No, she could not bear it. But he's floating on my water stairs. Did he come to see us and meet with an accident? He could have got the wrong address. But the houses in Venice had no addresses. There was no point, since the neighborhoods changed location, and there were hardly any streets, only canals and flagstone lanes. People went to the post office for their post. It was not delivered via pneumatic tube, as it was in London. Oh, how she wished she were in London right now, and not standing over the dead body of an unfortunate man. Get a hold of yourself, Georgia. Another breath calmed the incipient panic. She apologized to the unknown man for deserting him at such a time, and hurried inside, calling for help. The housemaid appeared instantly, took one look out of the French doors, and screamed. Georgia grabbed her by the shoulders, which made the girl gasp into silence. We must call the police. Do you understand? The police. Polizia? Si, the polizia. At once. Pronto. The housemaid scurried away, wailing. The minutes ticked by with excruciating slowness on the small chronometer pinned to the lapel of her linen waistcoat. Georgia had time to drag Milly downstairs to witness the scene, and it was she who helped Georgia pick up her scattered painting equipment. Georgia's hands shook so badly that she dropped the pot of alizarin crimson altogether and wept as she tried to scrape the precious pigment back into the pot. She would never paint the geraniums opposite now. In fact, she thought grimly as she scrubbed the paint off her hands in her water closet, for 2pence she would tell Milly to pack, and they would board an airship to Switzerland, the south of France, anywhere but here. A commotion in the hall brought the 2 of them down from the first-floor sitting-room to find their major domo showing the police through to the water stairs. Signore Aironi was a man of dignity and duty, and it was clear that a dead body on his premises was more than he could bear. His English was adequate for the requirements of the household, but when asked, he was simply not up to translating questions from the police in his state of mind. Milly did so in Italian, rapidly and with colloquial accuracy, though Georgia was aware that the Venetian dialect was beyond her. Who discovered the body? The taller, thinner man in the black coat and trousers asked. I did, Georgia said. I came downstairs to paint and found him floating there, as you see him. At what time? About 9:30, I believe. The tide had uncovered 4 of the steps, if that is helpful. All of them crowded outside on the stone fundamente, as though the position of the tide upon the steps were a vital piece of evidence. For all she knew, it was. 7 are uncovered, the shorter one said. It sounded like an accusation, as though she had lied about there being 4. You did take your time arriving, Georgia pointed out. Whether Milly couched this observation in politer terms in the translation or not, it was clear the policeman didn't appreciate the remark. And what is this? He pointed at the crimson stain upon the fundamente. Is it blood? The victim's blood? Certainly not, Milly said indignantly. Her ladyship spilled some of her paint in the shock of finding that gentleman. So you say, he said, bending to examine the stain, which bore the evidence of George's attempts first to scrape up the pigment, and then to wash the remainder from the stone with canal water. Both attempts had been clumsy and unsuccessful, and now she realized could be construed as the acts of a guilty person, which was ridiculous. Oh, please, she begged, won't you take him out of the water? He must have family or friends who'll be worried that he has not come home. It is better that we wait for the monks, the tall one said. The who? Milly blurted. Whatever for? Signore Aironi pulled himself together enough to recall his duty. The monasteries house our hospitals, signorina. When there is a death, They come and bear the body away to be washed and tended before the funeral. Oh, but you mustn't do that, Georgia said, looking from one man to another. Not until we know how he died. All three male faces took on expressions of disgust. She realized a moment too late that she had sounded not only unladylike, but ghoulish, too. He may have met with an accident, she amended lamely. His family will wish to know. Or he may have met with murder, the tall policeman said, his hooded eyes intent upon her. We will make it our business to find out.
That's great. And I have my hands over my headphones, I'm listening, and I'm saying to myself that you've hooked me into these characters already. And you have a new character, I'm assuming with Georgia, and you have this world that she's in. How did you build up the fabric of this character that makes me want to say, I want to know more about her?
It's a spin-off series from a 12-book previous steampunk series, and for being book one of a new series, I wanted to take a lot of care in building her character, in making her sympathetic, in giving her pursuits that she was trying to be good at, even if she isn't very much. She's the wife of a baronet, and he abused her during their marriage, and now he is dead. And so her son is now the new lord, and he has sent her on a trip around the world. So she is tasting freedom for the first time, and that's why she wants to try and make the painting as good as it can be for her son. But I'm afraid she's never going to succeed very well at painting, but she is really good at noticing things.
Yeah, and you get that too, and that's excellent. I always like to learn. When I hear things like that, I go, this is how I need to build the characters up and have them experience the world around them. So congratulations and thank you for that for me. So I'm done down here, and now, Al, I think we are all marching to your end of the bar because, as always, when we get to this point, drinks are on you.
This has been a production of the House of Mystery Radio Show. To find out more about our show, guests, or hosts, go to our website at houseofmysteryradio.com.